In this chapter of your Introduction to Management course and book, we defined management terms and we make definitions briefly. We define the management process, which is referred to being as management functions, also management structure, basic management skills and managerial roles, a very important process which is leadership, and also communication in organizations are being described in this chapter. Management can be defined in various ways. It depends on from which perspective the term is being defined or described. Some definitions are achieving goals by the contribution of others, attainment of goals by others through planning, organizing, leading and controlling activities. These activities are the management functions. Another definition could be made as coordinating and overseeing the work activities of others for completing the work efficiently and effectively. We can make other definitions and descriptions for management. There are some common elements of any management definition that we could make. These common elements of management definitions are goals, people, and coordinated activities. So these elements are the basics of a management process wherever this process is taking place. Management process aim to attain one specific goal, which is the organizational performance. To attain the organizational performance at the highest level possible in the given set of circumstances. Let's define organizational performance. It is being achieved by two factors, which are organizational efficiency and organizational effectiveness. These two elements of the organizational performance have to be balanced. Organizational effectiveness is the degree to the achievement of organizational goals based on the statements and expectations of the organizational environment, the managers and the employees, and all stakeholders, of course. Organizational efficiency, on the other hand, is about the costs. The amount of overall resources used for the achievement of an organizational goal is described as organizational efficiency. As I mentioned before, there must be a balance between these two elements of the organizational performance. This balance changes from one environment or management or organizational environment to another. What we mean by the balance is for an output, both organizational effectiveness and organizational efficiency must be achieved. Sometimes one of them is at the lower level, sometimes it's the opposite. This also depends on the managerial environment. This chapter also covers the management functions, which altogether form the management process. Therefore, management is a process through which required resources are utilized by a sequence of functions, starting with planning, organizing, leading, and controlling for attaining organizational goals. Mostly we refer to these management functions as being in a sequence because For example, planning answers the question to what, when, where, and how. Identifying goals and deciding which tasks will be performed and which resources will be utilized for attaining these goals are critical factors to be able to continue with the organizational activities. Therefore, planning is the primary function in the management process for being able to answer these questions. Planning is followed by organizing, which is determining tasks relevant to the goals established during the planning process, and grouping these tasks by departments, assigning the workforce for specific tasks and jobs that will be performed in the organization, deciding authority and responsibility relationships throughout the organization, and preparing the work environment, which includes allocating equipment, technology, and personnel in the amount and dimensions that are required by the specific organizational goals. This also changes from one set of organizational environment or circumstances to the other. Leading is another important sub-function of the management function. It is guiding the organization and or the group by using influence. Let's make a distinction here between a management process and a leading process. The details are covered in your book. A manager applies the management process. A leader, on the other hand, guides and motivates employees or groups for attaining goals. Let's repeat. Management process is being dominated by legal authority mostly, whereas leadership process is being designed by the influence of individuals, for example, using their charisma. Controlling is the ultimate function of the management process. It is to determine to what extent the standards or expectations are being achieved. In other words, controlling is establishing standards and or plans for the processes subject to controlling. Measuring the outcome or the performance, overseeing the match between the standards and expectations and the outcome for a given process, and if necessary, applying corrective measures, maintaining a course of action, which is the most important part of the controlling process, and formulating, if necessary, a new or modified plan of action throughout the management process. This is a cycle which goes back to the planning function. Please read the details in your book. Management structure is hierarchical. Therefore, there are levels, managerial and hierarchical levels. We define the management structure as being a pyramid. These levels are top, middle, and lower level or supervisory levels or first line levels. Top or executive management it can be composed of changes from one business or organization or company to another, these titles and how they are being referred to, but generally CEOs, COOs, presidents, vice presidents, for example, a rector or board of directors compose the top management level in a hierarchical organizational structure. Middle management is composed of division heads, directors, plant managers, or for example, in a university, a dean as the middle level managers. The function of middle level managers is to form a bridge between the top management and the lower management, and also maintain that communication and interconnection throughout the organization. First line or supervisory management, on the other hand, is composed of section chiefs, project leader, supervisor, or an office manager. Management skills we can refer to as being performed by different levels of managers. Generically, we can refer to some management skills in an organization, but we mostly correlate these skills to certain management levels. A skill is a combination of knowledge, behaviors, and attitudes for performing a task. And generically, skills are grouped as conceptual, human skills or soft skills, and technical skills. Conceptual skills mostly correlates to the top management in an organizational structure, which is seeing the organization as a whole to reach, coordinate, and integrate resources to attain established goals throughout the organization. So conceptual skills require the top management people to see the organization as a whole and to think strategically. They also establish strategic relationships, for example, with the external environment. Human and soft skills are related to establishing constructive relationships with other members of a group or a department or a unit. And technical skills are basically attached to the job and task itself. It is about job-specific knowledge, experience, and ability to performing the tasks or jobs at a proficient level. And technical skills are mostly attached to the first line or supervisory level managers. Level skills, these are all a combination of complicated managerial roles. Managers have to perform a combination of roles, not only in the internal environment of an organization or a business, but also related to the external environment. That is why we refer to management or being a manager as a labyrinth. A role is a set of behaviors and applications expected of someone relevant with her or his position. And generally, they are grouped as interpersonal roles, decisional roles, informational roles, which are on the agenda of a manager, no matter what the level is. But these certain goals are related more to certain levels of the organizational hierarchy. For example, decisional roles are mostly related to the top management and middle management, while interpersonal roles are mostly attached, important for middle level managers more than the others. This chapter also covers the basics of leadership, the leadership process, definitions, descriptions, and some styles of leadership. But simply, leadership is influencing a group of individuals towards the accomplishment of common goals. And approaches to leadership are being mentioned in your book, which are traits approach, behavioral perspective, contingency theory, and contemporary approach, and others. The definition of a leader is important to us in order to make a distinction to a manager only. A leader is someone who applies the leadership process through inspiring, motivating, encouraging, guiding, empowering, and many other types of attitudes and behaviors. These are distinctive to the leader figures in a society or in a business organization. But of course, it is preferable to see a manager also possessing some leadership skills. Finally, this chapter covers the communication process, which is also an important aspect of a successful management process performance. Communication is the process of transmitting a message from one person, a group, or a unit, or a spot to another. And the dimensions of communication are covered in your chapter as formal communication and informal communication channels. With this last topic, we finalize the management chapter. But for details, examples, and many cases, please read your book and your management chapter carefully. Thank you for listening.